Hello, I'm Joe Walensky, the host of the Digital Accessibility Podcast, the people behind the progress, where I have the fun job of talking to people who are accessibility professionals. And today I am speaking with Fabiana Lassandro. Hello, Fabiana. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for inviting me over. I'm very excited.
Well, I am in my home office in Bellingham, Washington, which is about 80 miles north of Seattle. Where are you talking to us from?
I'm from London, London area, let's say.
Well, thanks for being part of this. We always appreciate having international guests as part of this program. Probably the best place to start is if you tell us a little bit about what you are involved with now.
Yeah, so I'm an accessibility engineer, and alongside that, I also teach at the university. And it's a nice combo. I think I have the chance to be practical and reviewing code. So talk with engineers and designers that are already in their career, like after like a long experience in their job. And then on the other side, I have the chance to explain accessibility to students that are starting in the web just now. They don't have yet habits or preconceptions about how we should do things. And it's really interesting for me to jump from one side to the other one.
Well, it's good to hear about both your educational work and the things that you're doing as an engineer, and I would like to hear more about that. But why don't we go back in time and you could tell
Mm.
me a little bit about your background and how you found your way into accessibility.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite story because it was, like in a love relationship, it was like unexpected. I didn't see that coming. Um, when I was attending my master's in web design, uh, I never heard of accessibility before, and I didn't know that we developers or designers could build in a way or design in a way that could prevent people from accessing the products. I didn't thought about it. I didn't think that that was possible. And then while studying, accessibility was pretty much part of the program. So it was included. It wasn't taught as a separate topic. So I realized that uh, as a designer or developer, I could have the chance to do my part and change things for the better in my side of my job. And from there, then when I started my career as a front-end developer in BT, as part of a hackathon, I had the chance to get in contact with the accessibility team, and they were just running an accessibility mentorship in like in a couple of weeks. The first it was a pilot program, and I just thought, wow, this is the universe is like, speaking to me. So I attended the program was 6 months, and after that I had the chance to pick up there was an accessibility specialist role. So I interviewed for that, and I got the job, and that was a turning point for me because I could learn how to audit, products, reporting issues, and I was involved with training engineers, designers, work with the design system. So it was a great opportunity. From there, I moved into a ticket master. And I became an accessibility engineer. And there I could, work at a scale, apply accessibility to the Ticketmaster platform, working, with the design system. And yeah, so this was my journey. And then in a few weeks, I'll move in a slightly different role. I will start working with a level access as a solution engineer. So I will, have the chance to talk with clients. So far, I was working internally, like with internal stakeholders. So it will be I'm looking forward for the challenge, like have an impact, but with different clients instead of just with the products that are within the company that you work for.
Well, congratulations on taking this next step.
Thank you.
Uh, Going back to the what you mentioned earlier, you talked about a 6-month program that you were involved in. Could you tell us a little bit about more about what that was?
Yeah, sure. So it was an internal program. The accessibility manager, that then she became my line manager later on. She built, with the help of the rest of the team, this program that was essentially going through. Now that I obtained a CPAC certificate, a WS certificate, I can see that that mentorship was trying to, provide like a more accessible and a more engaging kind of material to essentially teach the same things that you could learn from the certificates that the CPAC and WS are trying to teach us. It was like the first steps to have a foundation on accessibility, and it was trying to merge both like the theoretical aspects and but also the more practical bits, because the idea was building knowledge for accessibility champions, and eventually having the chance to hire part of them, or at least have accessibility champions across the company.
Well, it's great that you had that available to provide you with that internal training. In your work that you're still doing now as I believe you said as an engineer, could you talk a little bit more detail about what that consists of?
Hmm.
It would be interesting to hear kind of what things that you're involved with either every day or every week, the things that take up a lot of your time.
Yeah, so it's mainly about uh, spreading accessibility knowledge. So if I have to say what is the core of it, and then it depends who I'm talking to. Of course, I do it in a different way. So part of my time, for example, could be dedicated to there's a new component in the design system. We need to make sure that is accessible. So I start conversations with the designers. We make sure that the accessibility criteria are part of the story, that are write down, so that is designed, so accessibility is embed since the design phase, and then there are accessibility criteria available for developers. I also wanted to provide the criteria like with the BDD format. So, meaning that instead of just providing a bullet point list with fix this, fix that, but also walk through the developer the scenarios like when you do this, this is what's happening, so that's why we should fix it, because the expected result is this this other behavior. The idea was, while providing criteria and say what are the expectations, also try to explain why. So the idea behind that is, next time when they're going to encounter a similar scenario, they know why we are fixing that and why we should take care of that specific functionality or fix or behavior. And that over time, it was, we could see like a positive effect. We weren't introducing common issues anymore. So that was one of the things that I was doing. Really, I think the design system is one of my favorite projects because it just goes hands in hands with accessibility. It's one of the best place where we can uh, start to, as we say in our, in the accessibility community, to shift left, so to start introducing accessibility from the very beginning.
And you also mentioned that you were involved in teaching. So, what is that like?
Yeah, I love it. So I really love teaching in general. Having the chance to be in touch with the students, and also refresh my experience when I was a student, and what it means for the first time to come up, study what's the web and what it involves and what it is about. It just, keeps my love and interest for the web alive. And I can see myself when I was a student. So I love that part of this job. And then because it's about accessibility, which is what I'm passionate about, the oh, what I find rewarding is when with the students, while we are explaining what is accessibility about, like how we realize together that there's no, what I teach is a part of the web design program. So when we realize that there's no web without accessibility, like accessibility is at the core of it, and everything that they learned so far is just making sense. Accessibility is just making sense as part of the web, because it's meant to be for everyone. And it was, when it was born, accessibility was embedded into it. And I think that the students are realizing that the risk is that by adding layers, um, and by that I mean adding complexity to a project, if you don't keep accessibility in mind, there's the risk that you um, just lose it on the way. And as you lose it on the way, there's the risk of also losing quality.
And what was the program that you were teaching, or was it a university class?
Yeah, so it's part of a module, is inclusive and sustainable web design. And the module is part of the MA in web design and content planning at the University of Greenwich.
And I did want to just go back to one of the things you mentioned about your work. You mentioned working with design systems, and
Mm.
that's always good to hear. It's a great way to bring accessibility into the design process. How is that set up at your organization? Are you working within the design system directly, and how do you collaborate with the other designers?
So as it works is that there's like a dedicated team to the design system, but then there are multiple developers that are picking up a component and developing it. It depends also if that component, which is what is the team that is gonna use it the most. So what the design system, it benefits from different kind of point of view, different developers that are working to the same, contributing to the same code base. And in terms of QA, so who is then checking the components, there's the responsible of the design system, the art director, and then I test it from the accessibility point of view to ensure consistency, to ensure that the accessibility criteria are implemented, and also that there are no clashes once you test it with a keyboard or with a screen reader. Um, or for example, sometimes when you use like a package, now there are different packages, right? When you work with React, like AriaKit, for example, it gives a lot of, you know, it's helpful, but sometimes it can introduce unexpected behavior just because your component is not exactly matching what was the component intended for. So over in that time when you're reviewing, that's when things could start to become time consuming and you need to do a lot of back and forth. So that's how we work. There's like a dedicated team, but then is open to the rest, the bigger team to contribute to the design system.
Oh, it's good to learn a little bit more about that and in your academic work and your background. And Fabiana, thank you for taking the time to talk about your journey into accessibility, and the best of luck with your new position.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.